else he can play. Everybody's playing spike ball, and Wes is like, hold on, guys, I'm over here.
Oh, guys, I got to throw a go route to Nick Harbor again.
Exactly.
Who's apparently the cheat code of the game. I was browsing some Reddit the other day, and people were like, there's this guy, Nick Harbor at South Carolina. He's the cheat code of the game. So, like, he's going to have a reputation that precedes him before the season even starts, just on this alone.
That does not help. That really doesn't help him. Like, last year it was the whole, like, #1 athlete in the country, 5-star, runs a, whatever Nick's running nowadays, 10-1, whatever he ran in high school. He runs this in the 60s, maybe going to be an Olympian, and that didn't help, with the expectation. And then EA goes and makes him a 99 speed, which is, really, it's accurate.
Great compliment.
Accurate,
yeah. Well, and Joe and I were talking about this in the last segment there, that his overall is an 82, which I feel like that's pretty apt to where he's at this point, because the speed off the chart, like, there's no doubt about that. And we saw it on display on the football field a couple times last year. Obviously, we've seen what he's done in track. That's fine, but is obviously still trying to refine some of the finer points of being a wide receiver, the route running, all that kind of stuff, the awareness, those kind of things that we hope is going to come along. And, those ratings can be adjusted to where maybe he can be a 90 by the end of the year overall. Who knows? But I feel like 82 is pretty accurate to where he's at right now.
Yeah, but we'll see. That is kind of now. Did you, Tyler? Do you have a full list? Was that
I do
texting? So you have a full list of everybody's ranking.
As far as I know, this is everybody. And I was looking because I'm trying to find where Hunter Rogers is. He's not popping off the page as of right now.
Well,
but he's supposed to be in the game, right?
Yeah, he tweeted something out about it, or posted on X, I guess. I think it's not a tweet.
Maybe he's Twitter. A late edition.
He says, 56 overall tight end.
Okay, because the list that I'm looking at has Andrew Calasudro at 57 as the lowest. So maybe he was a late ad.
Okay, maybe so.
And because there's no Madden has long snappers as a position. I don't think NCAA ever had long snapper as a set position. You could just be like a center that they would have doing that. So I guess they just made him a tight end, which he has caught a touchdown before. So there's that.
Well, he said 56 overall tight end, and then a laughing face and some other emoji that I can't really describe, and then it says vertical threat, though. So I guess they labeled him, which, again, accurate.
Maybe so.
They watched the Notre Dame film where he called that touchdown.
Look at career stats. 1 touchdown.
What's Kai Kroger's passing rating?
That's what I'm interested to see, because he's an 80 overall.
Ooh.
But, like, if he has, like, an accuracy, like passing accuracy of, like, 98,
that'd be hilarious.
He hasn't really missed.
Line up and run a fake punt every time in the game. I don't feel like that would work. I don't feel like this is a game where you can, like, game the system and just run a bunch of stupid plays over and over.
Honestly, even, like, the other, like, haven't been as dedicated of a Madden player, but, like, even fake punts and stuff in Madden don't really work all that often. Yeah. Like, you're better off just lining up for a traditional play on 4th and 3 or whatever, as opposed to trying to use one of your up backs to fool the defense.
Yeah, that's a no-go. Anyway, I think I got us off the rails there. We did have on the agenda to maybe, are we comparing some of the player rankings?
We can, yes, absolutely. Because we have the full list. Now, Rocket Sanders is the #1 overall rated player at 88 overall, which I don't think anybody's going to argue with. We saw what he was able to do at full health at Arkansas a couple seasons ago. If there was going to be a Carolina player to break the 90 mark, it would have been him. We talked about Quinson Judkins, the other week when EA Sports put out their list of the top 100 rated players, and he was like 94, 95, I believe. And again, he and Rocket were neck and neck 2 seasons ago in the SEC. Of course, we didn't see a whole lot of Rocket last year because of the injury. Quinson Judkins had another amazing year at Ole Miss, and now he's off to Ohio State. But in terms of, and I assume they're going to adjust the ratings as the year goes along, like they do in Madden. If Rocket turns out to what we think he can be, he could easily make that 90 club by mid or late season.
Club 90.
Yeah.
So I'm looking over, we said, and we went over this the other day, in that top 5, Kyle Kennard was in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Kyle's not a household name yet for Gamecock fans because he's a transfer.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that he wasn't this – he's coming from Georgia Tech. He wasn't this huge, big-time recruit. Even in the portal, like I'm sure he had other offers. He was kind of FSU was after him. Those are kind of the main 2 schools. Those FSU, South Carolina were the main 2 you heard about. But he's an 84. He's in the top 5 there. There are a couple folks, Tyler, that I've seen that I think have gripes.
Okay. Who tops your list?
Lenore Sellers is one because, he's a 78. And I get it because there's not much data there.
Sure.
He hasn't played.
Sure.
He played in a handful of games. He hasn't started a game. But I'd be tempted to move him up because of the talent.
I said this to Joe. I feel like that's a good placeholder. Because
78's the old placeholder ranking.
78, one above him is Dylan Stewart at 79. Again, 2 guys that we think have a great upside potential. Mm-hmm. But we've not seen them play meaningful college snaps. We saw Lenore Sellers a little bit last year, but this is their first time to come in and really prove themselves in a starting role. And again, we'll see how Stewart ends up rotating in. We imagine everything that we've seen and heard this offseason, he's going to get his run there at the edge spot. But I feel like the rankings they have coming in as 4- and 5-star guys respectively nets them in the higher 70s. But until you prove it on the field, I don't think you can break the 80 mark just yet.
I think that makes sense. Mazio Bennett has a gripe. Again, has not hit the field, but 64.
That's low.
Rough. That's a little rough for him. For a guy who was a top 250 guy at the high school level. The other one to me that I think is kind of egregious, but also understand is kind of just probably just not really on the radar. Jawan Howell being a 68. I can't get on board with that. I think, he's played 1 year of ball. Yes, he played at South Carolina State. So that's not going to, that I feel like that's kind of he put up huge numbers. It was at South Carolina State. If you're playing with South Carolina State in the game, no offense, but a lot of their players would be in that lower, I'm just going off past history of how they rank players in the game.
Right.
So that's probably why, but Wes has heard a lot of buzz this spring and this offseason about Jawan Howell. And then, you look at what he did at SC State. It was pretty impressive. So I think he's got a gripe to probably at least be in the 70-something range. But at the same time, I think you got to recognize, they're not going to go through – this isn't for the game. This isn't like Georgia's roster where I haven't seen Georgia's roster. Do they have a bunch of guys who were in the 60s on the roster? I highly doubt it.
The third strings probably, but and that's what I'm so interested in because again, I think overall, they did a very good job with how they rated most guys in South Carolina's roster. Where all this information, yes, you can look at what you actually see on the field and stats, stuff like that. But for some of these other guys that haven't gotten a chance to really play, are they reading Gamecock Central? Or are they looking at what you guys do covering the team on a daily basis to figure out a little bit more intimate details of these guys they haven't seen yet? I would actually be interested to know all the details that go into that.
That part didn't come out, right? They gave some details specifically, they use PFF data and things like that, which we use a lot when we're analyzing games. I haven't seen anything. It's possible. Let us know if, phone or text, Firehouse Subs text line. If I haven't seen them say, here's how we did high school guys or guys who have never played or transfers where you kind of don't really know.
Sure.
I think if you go up and down the rankings, though, you can kind of see a pattern of it looks like they kind of ordered them somewhat by high school rankings, right? You can kind of just get a sense of that. So it is a tough job. It's hard to rank players in real life if you cover college football and are watching it all the time. Of course, they have a lot more data for this game in the year 2024 than they would have had, say, in NCAA 14, right? You remember how you even turn that game on when you're playing with HB number 25, and you're like, okay, you know who that is.
Sure.
His ranking seems way off. Like, this is some big time player, and he's a 62.
Right.
Or they have this guy who doesn't even play, and he's a 84. It doesn't always make sense. So I think they did a good job with what they have overall. But that said, there's some guys that locally, like Jawarn Howell, we're going to look at and say, that doesn't maybe really match what he's going to do from a production standpoint.
One guy, I'm not saying he's overrated here, but I'm actually kind of surprised they gave him this generous of a rating. How about Torricelli Simpkins at 81?
Mm-hmm. The third.
Especially a guy that's coming from, again, an FCS, which, again, we know he's played a lot of football, very experienced guy. Like, I think that's actually pretty generous on their part to put him that high.
That's kind of the counterpoint to what I was saying about Howell right now.
Yeah.
Now, Simpkins has played a lot more.
Sure.
He's basically started every game since he got to college, but that one was surprising. That's one where you would think, like, taking more of a surface level look.
Sure.
They'd be like, he came from North Carolina Central, small school, whatever.
Especially for someone, because he's listed as a center in here where, and I haven't looked at the depth chart, he would be behind Vershawn Lee, I'm assuming, in the depth chart on the game. So to have a second-string guy rated at 81, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good. That is. Yeah, good ranking for him, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm sure he'll be pleased with that. But, again, these will be adjusted as the season goes along. So, by mid-year, who knows, maybe we could have a couple guys break the 90 club, which would be certainly a welcome sight. And, again, I look forward to getting my hands on this game sometime today and maybe throwing some go routes to Nick Harper myself.
That sounds like fun. So that's your plan for
that's my plan. That is my goal as soon as I leave here today. Go pick up a copy and then spend the rest of my day doing that. I've already told my wife, hey, game comes out today. This is what's happening.
This is what we're doing. Or maybe not we're doing. This is what I'm doing.
This is what I'm doing. If you want to watch on the couch, she's got like a Nintendo Switch. She can play Animal Crossing or something. But
that's awesome.
That's my goal for the weekend. Is to see how far I can get in EA College Football 25. We'll jump back into some Media Day discussion now that the week is over out there in Dallas. What did we learn? Did we learn anything at all from all the coaches that we heard from? We'll hit that coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on your Friday here on the game.
Tell you about our friends over at Firehouse Subs. We're always doing this show from 11 to noon, and every time I talk about Firehouse Subs, makes me hungry. But that's good because there are 14 different locations all around the Midlands. There's one right here close to the studio, USC campus location on Main Street. I could walk over there in a few minutes if I wanted to, or I could drive to any of the other 14 Midlands Firehouse Subs. And the great news about Firehouse Subs is they have several different ways for you to order. If you want to go in and check out the sights and the smells and, look through the menu for a long time, you can certainly do that. Or you can go online, firehousesubs.com, or my favorite method, download the Firehouse Subs app. You can register for a free account that's going to let you earn rewards on future purchases. When you order your food, avoid the wait, order online, use the Rapid Rescue to go, all of your Firehouse Subs favorites, and you can earn yourself rewards points, firehousesubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head and Chris Clark along with you here on your Friday as, again, everything's wrapped up out there in Dallas for SEC Media Days. Heard from all 16 coaches, and now we wait in the next month and a half or so until the season officially kicks off. Any new feelings at the end of this week? Did we learn anything significant about any of the teams in the SEC that maybe we didn't know when the week began?
Well, I have a thought. I don't know if it falls into that bucket, but something did strike me. Just listening to Kalen DeBoer from Alabama a little bit. I joked the other day on the show when we were talking about that matchup this season that Kalen DeBoer, Alabama's new head coach, taking over from Nick Saban, and I made a joke to the effect of he's lost 8 games in his entire career.
Yep.
But actually, I wasn't that far off.
Yeah, he's 104-12, I believe, right?
Yeah. So he's lost 12 games, not 8. Yeah. I was being a little bit sarcastic, but
not much.
Not much. Yeah. 104-12 is correct. He made the college football playoff with Washington
in his second year.
In year 2. When he was an NAIA coach at, Sioux Falls.
Mm-hmm. They were the Alabama of NAIA.
They were the Alabama of NAIA, and he was 17-2 and won 3 national titles in the span of 4 years. So here's the point I'm getting at is, if you're looking at Alabama, and I don't care if you're South Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, whoever you are in the league, if you're looking at Bama going, ooh, okay, good. One less team we have to worry about because Nick Saban left, not so fast on that, I would say, because are things going to be, different? Oh, yeah, sure.
Sure.
But I think Kalen DeBoer is, one of the questions that people had, well, will he be able to come in and recruit like Nick Saban did? Well, the good news is for him is you are at Alabama. That helps.
Mm-hmm.
We could hire me, you, and Captain Dave to go recruit at Bama, and we'd do fairly decent, I think.
Sure.
We might run it into the ground ultimately, but
you got the A on your chest. You're gonna get some pull.
That helps. But they're on a run right now in recruiting, right?
Yeah, doing incredible.
But this guy, they've got the number 1 class in the country right now. Everybody's talking about Georgia's recruiting. It's almost getting lost what Alabama's doing in recruiting.
Sure.
Number 1 right now. He's already got inheriting a good team that was in the playoff last year. For all this all the struggles. I mean, Saban talked about it. He looked worn down at the end of the year. He walked away. That kind of finished off his career, and he attributed it that it was a tougher season than normal. They still made the playoff.
Sure.
They're recruiting very well. And this guy's track record is amazing. So that's, if you're looking just at resume, there were only a few coaches that Alabama could have hired that would have been as much of a home run, I think, as Kalen DeBoer was. So, and they've got a guy who's on some Heisman lists, and he's in the argument for the guy's best quarterback in the league, and Jalen Milroe.
And that's where I kind of fall with Alabama, where, losing the greatest coach of all time is going to be some kind of detriment.
Sure.
You're not going to, just not have any kind of bump in the road because of that. But I feel like they've earned the until proven otherwise. You got to give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay. I mean, does that mean they're going to go 16-0, win the national championship? Maybe not, but could they still make the college football playoff? Absolutely, because of just the talent that they have, the depth that they have on that roster. Yeah, they lost some guys. Caleb Downs went to Ohio State, and for a handsome payday, I'm sure. They were going to lose Caden Proctor to Iowa, so he decided to come back. He was like, cornfields are great, but Tuscaloosa is a little bit better. So went back to Tuscaloosa there. So they still got a ton of talent, and like you said, Kalen DeBoer is an incredible coach that has won everywhere he's been. Yes, this is going to be his toughest challenge by far by coming in the SEC and taking over the reins of the greatest dynasty perhaps college football's ever seen. But again, until they prove otherwise, until they lose 3 games in a row, I think we should still believe that they're going to be as close to the same old Alabama as they've been.
Yeah, they were incredible under Nick Saban, just generally, obviously, but saw a stat yesterday. I mean, at home, they were almost unbeatable.
Yeah.
I think they lost one game in his last, several years at home. They didn't lose many games, period.
But specifically, that's why that Texas loss last year was like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
They came into Bryant-Denny and beat Alabama.
Yeah.
Then maybe this team does belong in the SEC.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and they do. And I think, by the way, that is one thing. And we might jump around to some different teams as we talk here. And I want to talk about South Carolina more as well. But, Texas, something that we learned, and maybe you say, it's coach speak. But Steve Sarkisian said this is the deepest team that we've had since I've been here. And I do think there's evidence to it. Sometimes a coach may say that and you go, I don't know, man. I don't really see it, or he's just saying that. Or, to me, when you've got a team that's as good as Texas was last year, the way that they've recruited, Sark's a brilliant offensive coach. I mean, he really is. I don't know what you thought of his time with the Falcons, Tyler, but he was
fine.
He was fine. Yeah,
I think he's better in college, but he was fine.
He does appear to be good in college for whatever reason.
Sure,
maybe like Steve Spurrier.
Sure.
Even though Spurrier, head coach at the NFL, Sark was just an OC, but he's really good. I mean, he's respected. I mean, just look at his peers. Nick Saban talked about him the other day. He said, I hated playing against him, because Saban got really granular about some of the details about why formationally and things like that. He hated playing against him. But the point is, Texas is coming in, and I think they're immediately going to be a huge factor in the conference. And that's one thing that we kind of learned is Sark seems to feel really, really good about this team. And so there's not just one team in the SEC. That's another kind of learning point, I think, from media days. It was just driven home. Listening to Saban, hearing what the coaches had to say, kind of diving into some of these rosters as the week went on. Some years in the SEC, it's like it's been in the past, it's Bama, and then there's kind of everybody else.
Sure.
Lately, Georgia, it's been like, it's Georgia and Bama. And, this year, there's a bunch. I mean, you have a hard time. First of all, you could pick several different teams as to who's the best team overall.
Right.
And you would have a legitimate argument. Beyond that, it's like, who's in the top 5? Well, it could be a variety of teams in a variety of different orders.
And I'm assuming we're going to get it later today, but the media poll has not officially come out yet, but we'll get it sometime today probably. And that's what I'm most interested to see is where people's vote shakes out. Again, I don't think it's going to be a surprise that most people are going to have Georgia number 1, but 2, and again, I think Texas is the second best team to me, but a lot of people are going to put Bama there. Some people are going to put Ole Miss there. If you want to get a little crazy, maybe put Missouri there for you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of possibilities that, for so many years, it seemed like the SEC race was kind of chalk, right? Like, all right, Georgia and Alabama are going to play each other in the championship game, and that's it. Fill out the rest from there. But this year, there's a lot of intrigue. Like, we don't quite know who that second team or both teams are going to be, quite frankly. Like, it's really wide open.
Do you have a top 5 you would give us?
I do, actually.
Oh.
I went.
Looks like it might be saved on the computer, too.
I have Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Missouri. That's my top 5. Missouri has a really easy schedule, by the way.
Yes.
I think that benefits them in a lot of ways.
Who was up next for you?
After that, I had Tennessee and LSU, 6 and 7. Then Oklahoma at 8. That's my top half of the SEC.
Yeah, I think that's a good top 5, and it's probably those teams in some order. Even if you're like, nah, I don't think. I think Texas is number 1, or I think Bama is number 1, not Georgia. I think those 5 teams, like, those are the ones that most people are looking at. Now, I did point out the other day, for some reason, and I think it's computer stuff, so it's not just a dude looking at it, the ESPN FBI, the Power Index, they've got Ole Miss at like number 9, which was interesting to me.
I don't know if transfers factor as big into the calculations for the FPI, which I think is maybe why that's a little bit lower, because that did surprise me a little bit too. But the talent that they have, in addition to what they have coming back from last year, I don't see how they can't be that successful. You know what I mean?
Well, did you see what Jim Nagy, director of the Reese Senior Bowl, said about Ole Miss? And he was talking about their portal class and how much talent they brought in. He said that they being Ole Miss has the most pro prospects. I think he was saying in the country this season. 20 players with draftable grades.
I believe it. I mean, Juice Wells probably gonna be one of those guys. Walter Nolan coming over from Texas A&M.
Prince Hugh, not going to try the last name.
Yeah, Jackson Dart. He's not going to be the top quarterback taken, but I imagine he'll probably be around a Spencer Rattler type, middle round type of guy, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that could be the team where most people are going to have them in the top 5.
Sure.
But that could be the team we look back like if you're picking one out of the top 5 that you could say, okay, I could see them winning the whole thing.
Right. Continue our Media Days discussion. Look at this from a little bit of a South Carolina standpoint and what maybe the entire conference is thinking about the Gamecocks coming away from this week. Hit that coming up next. Gamecocks Digital Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Chris Clark along with you on this Wednesday. Wrapping up things as far as SEC Media Days go. And gosh, the week is so long at Media Days. And obviously we weren't out there in Dallas, but it still feels like, when Beamer and company took to the podium, that was like a month ago, and it was only on Monday. But so much happens during the week, and we hear from so many different coaches that, it feels like it was much further away. And the message that Beamer and the players conveyed was, yeah, we know you're going to doubt us. We know we're going to be picked towards the bottom of the media poll, and that's fine. We think we're better. We're going to go out there and prove it on the field. It wasn't we're going to, post your bulletin board material or whatever. Like, it was a very speak softly and carry a big stick kind of approach, I felt like, coming away. That being said, do you feel like after this week, the conference has taken more notice of South Carolina, or is it still kind of the same? Yeah, they're whatever. Another 5-7 year. Let's focus on somebody else.
Yeah. As with anything, it probably depends on who you're asking. If you went and asked, Tennessee fans on Twitter, they'd say South Carolina's going to go 0-12, and all those things are 3-9.
Because they're the most logical people on Twitter, right?
So logically, I think the way that most people are looking at it, somebody like Nick Saban, for example, who did a great job with, his analysis, I think, of all the state of all the different programs. I don't think Saban was going to go up there and be like, "Oof, this looks bad,"
Sure.
But you kind of dive a little bit deeper into his comments, and he made a comment to the effect of, South Carolina's not that far away. When they've been able to run the ball well, they have done well. That's been obviously a big missing piece for them.
Let's hear exactly what Saban did have to say. Let's go cut number 25 from today's list here, Dave. This is Saban on the SEC desk on Monday talking about South Carolina and why he thinks they're not all that far off.
They're really not that far off. Yeah. They weren't that far off last year. I think they're 5-7, whatever, but they lost a couple really close games that could have made a huge difference. And they did have a ton of injuries. Yep. They are going to have a new quarterback, but this guy is a talented guy.
Yeah.
And they've got more depth in the offensive line than they've had in the past, and they do have a lot of experience back on defense. So they have some parts of their team that really could, if it works out, could work out very well for them.
I think Sellers should put talented guy - Nick Saban in his Twitter bio.
Yes. Coach Saban said I was talented. Yeah. But, Saban obviously pays attention.
Sure.
Like, sometimes you hear people say things and it's just kind of like platitudes. You're like, why did he say that? Like, that's not really paying attention. Those have been the things that we've been hitting on, right? Those are the key areas. If you're circling what could be better and what has to be better, what are the areas you expect to be better but also have to be in order to achieve success this year, whatever you think that is, improvement. It is the defense that does have a lot of talent returning. He's right. They've got to take a step forward. They have to play like they did in November as opposed to how they played in October last season. Mm-hmm. Offensively, you're replacing an NFL quarterback who was really, really good in Spencer Rattler, but you do have a guy, as Saban pointed out, in LaNorris Sellers that has a ton of talent. He's a big, smart guy who can make the throws and give you kind of an additional layer of mobility in that he's someone who can get you a 3rd and 2, a 4th and 2, but he can also scramble out of the pocket, break off a bunch of runs. So, there are questions about the team, but I think Saban did a good job of outlining what they were. And also, they did lose some close games last season.
Sure.
Even though it ended up being a 14-point game, I don't count UNC.
Sure.
But Georgia
on the lead.
Yeah, halftime lead. Florida was the one that you really circle, right? Even the Clemson game at home, now you lost by 9 points. Clemson didn't score an offensive touchdown. If you do anything of substance,
put together one more good offensive drive.
Well, if you don't have, Clemson didn't score an offensive touchdown. If you don't have a fumble return for a touchdown
on the opening play of the game,
when that happened, you're like, all right, well, this is going to be tough.
Yeah,
because Clemson's, so really, I think those are the two games that you point to. The Missouri game got out of hand. The Tennessee game, out of hand. a lot of the other ones are very close. And so the question is, look, some of these other teams at South Carolina, those that I mentioned, all those teams are going to be improved this year, arguably.
Sure.
So how much better can you get?
And my poll that, my version of the SEC media poll kind of reflects this. When you aren't 1,000% sure what the quarterback position is going to be, there's always going to be that hesitancy. And again, it's the most important position. They're the one to touch the ball every single play. Like, it makes a lot of sense. And again, we know what Lenora Sellers' upside is. He's still got to go out there and prove it on the field. So when you don't have that certainty, much like Nico at Tennessee, like, we hear all these great things about him, 5-star kid, that he's going to be, this next superstar for Tennessee for the next couple of years. We'll get to see it first before you actually believe it. Now, yes, Tennessee could be a top 3 team in the SEC. I put him at 6 because I don't know how good Nico's going to be. Same thing with Sellers here at South Carolina, in addition to all the new pieces across this team from the portal and, coming in as true freshmen, until you know for sure what you have at quarterback. Because a season ago, Carolina coming in off of an 8-5 year. Spencer Rattler coming back for another year. You knew what you had at the most important position. So I think it was easier for people to say, yeah, I think that's the 3rd best team in the SEC East.
Yeah, and to go back to your original question of kind of how is South Carolina viewed around the conference, when you go 5-7 in a year, generally, unless something's just very strange has happened, you're not going to turn around and say, I think that team's, 11-1, 12. Like, that doesn't happen. You have to have more incremental success normally. There have been some instances in college football where a team will go 5-7 and then the next year, boom. But, like, generally it doesn't get picked that way, which is very fair.
Right.
And so I think I would answer the question by saying that is how South Carolina is being viewed. You went 5-7. You could be better, but you have these questions. You must answer these questions in the face of a very tough schedule. And so it's a little bit more of a wait and see. And look, that's entirely fair. And I think South Carolina's players have acknowledged that. Shane Beamer has acknowledged that. They know that they're not going to be picked very high, and they know why. And so now it's, again, we kind of theme of the offseason, it's about going and just trying to flip that narrative by winning games.
Yeah. And again, it's going to be a 1 week at a time kind of thing that we're going to learn about this team. I mentioned earlier, no disrespect to Old Dominion, as I've said many times, but that should be a game that you win, hopefully pretty easily. Not going to have a lot of answers to questions after week number 1, probably. That week 2 game against Kentucky, that's going to be okay, here's what this team is. And same way for Kentucky, because they've got a lot of new things, new faces in new places as well, much like at quarterback with Brock Vandagriff coming over from Georgia. And then by the end of week 3 against LSU, I think we should have a pretty good idea of what this team is and who the key guys going to be. Hopefully the rotations are going to be places like on the defensive line, wide receiver, and all that kind of stuff. And then you have what you have for the rest of the 9 games.
Well, and we talked about this last week some. Can you get off to a better start? I think Shane Beamer mentioned that. Getting off to a better start, he mentioned the injuries that have hit early in the season, but also I think he generalized it a little bit more. If you look back at the first few years for South Carolina, last year they lost the opener in a very disappointing fashion. The previous 2 years, even though they beat Eastern Illinois 46-0 in year 1, and they beat Georgia State in 2022, remember what it was like after those games? It's kind of like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of underwhelming. Eastern Illinois, the defense carried the day. Georgia State, you had block kicks, and the offense didn't look discombobulated. I think Shane Beamer would like to see, no disrespect to Old Dominion, come out and dominate a game. That would make everybody feel better.
No, of course. Yeah, you win that game 63-3, and, you can get all the way down to your third stringers play, and we're feeling great.
You're setting a high bar there. Oh, my goodness.
We'll see what happens. Still got 43 days until that happens. We'll come back, wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Talk a little bit of recruiting for the 2026 class. Keeping an eye on what's happening down the road for Gamecock recruiting. That's next here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Chris Clark along with you here on your Friday on the game. And, it's never too early to be looking ahead. And we've talked so much about, South Carolina's 2025 class, which has picked up a lot of steam over the course of these really past couple of months. Had a rush of guys that, committed back in April. Have obviously had several commitments, including key ones. Got Lex Cyrus a couple weeks ago, a four-star kid. So that class is coming together. But we're also always keeping an eye on what's happening in 2026 as well. And you have a good detail of this on Gamecock Central. A lot of really key prospects within the state of South Carolina that Carolina's still in the running for in that 26 class.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the top 10 in the state. I'd say probably like the top 7 to 8. You got some guys that are big time prospects in there right now, according to the On3 industry ranking, which is a weighted average of all 4 major recruiting services. There are 5 4-stars in the state. I could see it climbing as high as 6 or 7, and at the top you've got a lot of talent. Guys with national level offers in the top 3 or 4. And so there's a little bit of depth to the class, but there's also very much some star power. Jordan Gidron, right down the road at Ridgeview High School, ranked the number 53 prospect overall in the country. 4-star prospect, 7th best receiver in the class. And then you've got another really good 4-star receiver also right down the road at Irmo and Donovan Murph, top 210 prospect, 3rd best player in the state, 4-star guy. So there's a couple big-time receivers that South Carolina is prioritizing, but there's also some other guys that have offers. I think the Gamecocks have offered. They've got Anthony Baxter committed, number 11 overall from South Point, an offensive lineman. But other than him, they've offered 7 other guys in the state. They've offered the top 7 guys in the state. And they have a chance, really, with all of them. I think differing degrees. I think there's some guys that South Carolina probably leads for, like Jazavian Currents out of South Point, the big safety. There's some guys they're behind on, like Jalen McGill, the 4-star running back from the upstate. I think some out-of-state programs are ahead there. But I think they're in the game firmly with some of the other players. Zion Giles from Carvers Bay, Desmond Green, Jamel Housey, tight end from Newberry. So there's a lot of talent here. And the reason why it's so important, yes, I know the transfer portal is big nowadays. It's going to continue to be big for South Carolina. But a lot of coaches have talked about this, including Shane Beamer. You do have to continue to prioritize high school recruiting. Ask any coach. They would love to build out the base of their roster through high school recruiting and developing those players for multiple years. Think back to the most successful periods in South Carolina history, and a lot of it was built on, they had some big-time out-of-state players, but they went through this great run of in-state talent, and they were able to keep more of those guys than not in the state. And so when you look ahead at 2026, it could end up being a very important class.
So you detailed Donovan Murph has narrowed down his top 12, which does include South Carolina. Is that really narrowing it down? That's still pretty broad. Like when I think of narrowing down, I think like a top 5 or maybe even like a top 6. 12 still seems very wide open.
A lot of people in the media joke that they won't even cover that or write a story about it. Like if you have a top 5, okay.
Sure. And now you're getting down to it, but like Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, LSU, North Carolina, South, like he's hitting all the big high points around the Southeast. Like, yeah, that sounds about right.
I do think it's hard to have a top, like a list of schools. Like if you see like a top 15, I'm like, man, it's pretty tough to be really, really considering 15 schools.
Sure.
I mean, there are some kids that do go visit 15 schools. If you do, I think you should be allowed to have, these are the 15 I'm considering. But you should probably wait a little bit and kind of. But I saw the other day there was a prospect. I'm trying to find how many it was because I don't want to misrepresent it. But he had a huge top list. Top 20. That was it. The top 20. You ever seen one of those?
Okay, now we're getting even broader. It's like, all right, that's probably every school that's
Here's my top.
had a conversation
Here's my
with you.
top 23.
Top 58.
Top 58.
I've ruled out North Texas and, I don't know, Utah State.
A random Division II school that offered me early. Yeah. I mean, but seriously, though, I mean, with Donovan Murph, with Gidron, Zion Giles, like a lot of these guys, by the way, I think Zion Giles from Carvers Bay could end up being maybe even the top prospect in the state. I think he should be in the top 5 already, just my opinion. Saw him in camp this summer, big 6'5", 290 offensive tackle, can move. Clemson and Carolina both want him. But you look at a lot of these guys, they've got big offer lists. You know, they're national. Murph and Gidron, they've got Bama, Georgia, all those. And so these are guys that you want to land. You know, they're in-state guys. Some of them are right down the road. Some of them are just somewhere else in the Palmetto State. But you want this to be a year you look back on and you say, hey, we've got 7 or 8 guys we've offered.
Right.
Let's land most of them.
Right. So we'll see what happens. Again, still working to finalize 25 class, but never too bad to keep an eye on 26 as well. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with myself, me flying solo today. Coming up next here on The Game.
Our friends over at Integrated Media can help you take your home to the next level. If you are thinking about before the football season, now that the new football game is out, if you've been thinking about making yourself a new man cave, the one that you've always wanted, the one that you've seen your buddies have, maybe you've even seen one on Integrated Media's Instagram or Facebook page. Integrated Media Columbia is where you can go for inspiration, and you're a little bit jealous of it. They can do it for you. IntegratedMediaInc.com or 803-948-8327. Anything you need in your home, whether it's a new TV, mounting that TV, hiding all the wires, tying all your systems together, security and cameras, Sonos wireless speakers, or making sure your internet signal is strong enough to handle all your streaming, gaming, all that good stuff.